Hello and welcome to a video on how Byzantium went from the dominant power in Europe to slowly declining and eventually ending in 1453. But before we begin, if you like history videos such as the collapse of the Timurids or the explosion of Ming, please do subscribe so you don't miss out on my next history video on the Burgundian succession crisis. The Byzantine Empire was founded in 330 CE. The Roman Empire was too large to manage, and so the Roman Emperor at the time divided his empire up into an east and west section. Under Justinian the Great, the Byzantine Empire expanded its borders and became the most dominant power in Europe. So how did this great empire fall? We start by going back to 1204. A Byzantine man by the name of Alexios Angelos promised crusaders in the Fourth Crusade money and supplies if they helped him take the Byzantine throne. Although Alexios Angelos took Constantinople by surprise and was able to get the throne, the people rebelled and he was deposed of. The Crusaders, however, were unpaid and decided to sack Constantinople so that their debt would be paid. The Byzantine Empire was left poorer, smaller, and ultimately less able to defend itself against the Ottoman conquest that followed. Although some historians say the Battle of Mezhenkirk in 1071 was the start of the decline for the Byzantine Empire, I believe the sack of Constantinople truly took more power away from the empire that could not be recovered. Adding to this, between the 11th and 15th century, Byzantium had a large amount of civil wars and rebellions. The Byzantines, much like the ancient Roman Empire, did not create rules for succession. According to the Byzantine political theory, the emperor was chosen by God, which allowed emperors like Justinian or Basil I to become emperors, even though they were from a peasant background. As you can imagine, therefore, it was easy to see why ambitious courtiers and nobles would start a civil war for the throne. A notable conflict was the Byzantine Civil War between 1341 and 1347, which was a dynastic dispute, and the consequences of this conflict were disastrous for the empire. Also at the time, the Black Death was around, which massively reduced the population of the Byzantine Empire. As time went on, the Byzantine military weakened, and the empire had to rely on mercenaries to fight their vassals, which drained tax revenue. Enemies of the empire also catched up to their military technology, and therefore this diminished the empire's military advantage. The final blow of the Byzantine Empire was the rise of the Ottomans during the 14th and 15th century. The Ottomans gained land in both Anatolia and the Balkans. The Ottomans tried to siege Constantinople a number of times in the 15th century, but failed due to the city's vast defences. However, in 1453, the Ottomans began to siege Constantinople, but this time it was under the leadership of Mehmed the Conqueror, who was determined to take down Byzantium. Meanwhile, the Byzantine Empire pleaded for help in Europe, but no significant armies came to relieve Constantinople. Mehmed would barrage the city for 55 days until finally he was able to break into the city. The Byzantine Emperor, instead of fleeing, gave a speech to his men and died trying to defend Constantinople. This Ottoman victory marked the end of the Byzantine Empire. Thank you guys for watching, and please check out some of my other history videos, such as the explosion of Ming, and shout out to my Patreon supporters.